Today is National Bourbon Day, and that led to a question about one of Kentucky's signature industries. Today, Jeff is asking, does bourbon have to be made in Kentucky? Well, here's Victor Puente with the answer to that good question.
No, bourbon doesn't have to be made in Kentucky. It does have to be made in the United States. But technically, bourbon can come from any state or territory in the U.S. Most bourbon does come from Kentucky. Kentucky Tourism says around 95% of the world's bourbon is produced in the Commonwealth. Tennessee also has some bourbon distilleries, although they have their own laws about what qualifies to be Tennessee whiskey, but some of that product is basically the same product as bourbon. A congressional resolution in 1964 declared in part to be entitled to the designation bourbon whiskey. The product must conform to the highest standards and must be manufactured in accordance with the laws and regulations of the United States, which prescribe a standard of identity for bourbon whiskey. Now, in addition to being made in the U.S., there are manufacturing requirements for a spirit to be considered bourbon. Those are up on your screen right now. You see them. They have to be made from a grain mixture that's at least 51% corn. They also have to be aged a certain way, and then there are requirements for the way it is distilled and aged. But as long as that is followed and it's produced in the United States, it can be called bourbon. If you have a good question, just email us, goodquestion@wkyt.com. I'll see you WKYT Mornings.